There's a lot of heckling from all sides.
For Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are rightly concerned about this Liberal government's political interference with the inquiry into the Emergencies Act. The Prime Minister has refused to turn over key evidence that Cabinet used to justify invoking extraordinary powers, and questions remain on how and why they selected Justice Rouleau to head the inquiry. Can the Prime Minister clear the air and confirm to this House, did any minister or member of their political staff speak with Justice Rouleau about the inquiry before his appointment? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when we invoked the Emergencies Act, we ensured that it was done in a proportional and time-limited way to enable to have the kind of restoring of order that we needed in Canada while maintaining people's confidence in the transparency and the accountability of democracy. That's why we move forward with the Parliamentary Committee. That's why we've moved forward with a national public inquiry as required to be able to give that full transparency. I can understand the Conservatives are concerned about this, Mr. Speaker. They're worried that it's going to show the level to which their support for these blockaders contributed to the difficulties for so many Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Renfrew-Nipissing Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, the government must invoke the National Defence Act to use the military for civilian law enforcement. The government insists it did not deploy the military during the February demonstrations in Ottawa. Now we know surveillance flights were conducted over Ottawa at that time. Did the government invoke any statute to deploy the Canadian Armed Forces in this manner, or was the surveillance conducted without lawful authority?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the flight in question was part of a Canadian Armed Forces training exercise that was planned prior to and was unrelated to the convoy protest. Now, Mr. Speaker, I think this is a perfect example where the official opposition in this country needs to be very careful about spreading.
I'll get order. I'll let the Prime Minister restart. Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here is the facts, Mr. Speaker. The flight in question was part of a Canadian Armed Forces training exercise that was planned prior to and was unrelated to the convoy protest. That's the fact, Mr. Speaker. Now, what the official opposition is playing with right here is dangerously close to misinformation and disinformation when they choose to make political hay out of something that could be concerning to many people if it were true, but is simply not. And I think it's important, and it behooves all of us in this House to demonstrate responsible leadership in how we move forward.
The Honourable Member for South Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister said, and I quote, "One has to be very, very cautious before deploying military in situations engaging Canadians. It is not something that anyone should enter in lightly," end quote. Yet now we have learned that Canada's special forces were operating surveillance aircraft, I'm sure they were just in training, over Ottawa during the February truckers' protests. This contradicts everything the government has said to date. Liberals didn't put soldiers on our streets, but they did put them in the air, Mr. Speaker. Wow. How can the Prime Minister justify using military assets to surveil?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want Canadians to pay very careful attention to this exchange. What the member opposite just engaged in is dangerously close to misinformation and disinformation designed to gin up fears and conspiracy theories around what happened a number of months ago. It is entirely irresponsible for members of Her Majesty's loyal opposition to stray so close to misinformation and disinformation. I would ask them to be more responsible.
We did cross a couple of lines there that I just want to be careful when we talk about misinformation and what we impugn other members of actually doing. So I just want to be careful, and I heard it from all sides. So I just want to make sure that I heard. Order. I can stand here the rest of the question period, and then that'll be that. Do we want to continue with question period? That is my question. Yes, please. Yes, please. Very good. The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Well, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that those
I can hold on a sec. No, I'm still on this. I'm still on this. Out of control. We need to bring it down just a little bit so that the people watching above, the people watching it at home can understand that we're having debate that is important to Canadians. So let's bring it down. The honourable member for Lethbridge.
The Emergencies Act can only be invoked if there's no other law in Canada that can deal with the situation at hand. Now, it appears that there was a military surveillance that was conducted during the Ottawa protests. I find that very interesting, as do many Canadians, because either the government authorized this flyover, this military surveillance, without lawful authority, or they utilized another law in Canada, namely the National Defence Act, and therefore the Emergencies Act wasn't required. So which is it? Did the government conduct military surveillance illegally, or did they invoke the Emergencies Act illegitimately?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Or, Mr. Speaker, the flight in question was part of a Canadian Armed Forces training exercise that was planned prior to and unrelated to the convoy protest. Mr. Speaker, that is the facts as put forward. Now, the choice of the Conservative Party of Canada to drum up and allude to conspiracy theories and come dangerously close to spreading misinformation and disinformation is something we need to be very careful about.
Respect the Speaker. Throw him out. Throw him out.
Order. Order. Previous comment applied.
Another point of order.
For Foothills.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sure all of us in this House are used to vigorous debate, certainly during question period, but there is a line that should be not crossed, especially when it comes to using unparliamentary language. The Prime Minister used an obscenity, and it was not fuddle-duddle, in describing the official opposition. I would ask the Prime Minister to stand and apologize for that language.
I can say during question period there was a number of things that was flying back and forth. I did not hear what the Prime Minister said, but all I can say is I heard a number of lies on this side as well. So those are things that should not be said in this House of Commons. And as I said before, during question period, to follow some decorum in this House of Commons, to watch what we're saying to each other so that we reflect what Canadians want in this House of Commons. I thank the member for his intervention.
What is the nature of your thoughts, gentlemen, when you say you move your lips in a particular way?
Okay, all right.
I was up in the gallery. I'm feisty QP, not the feistiest I've ever seen.
Nope.
Walking through this F word, the Prime Minister business, can you lay it out? What happened?
Yeah, so we were asking questions about several articles that had appeared in the Globe and Mail. There was one in the Ottawa Citizen related to the use of Canadian military aircraft during the Freedom Convoy flying over Ottawa. It's question period. The opposition has a right to ask questions of the Prime Minister. We asked the question of it. He responded, of course, as he's always doing now, that the opposition is engaging in misinformation and disinformation. We were just asking a question on what was in a newspaper article. After my colleague Carrie Lynn Finley sat down, the Prime Minister used an unparliamentary term. He dropped an F-bomb. Everybody in the first 2 rows across from the Prime Minister heard it. I asked the Speaker, there was a point of order that came up from the member from Foothills asking for an apology. By that time, the Prime Minister had already left the House of Commons. I then provided some clarity to the Speaker as to what was said and asked the Speaker if he would look into Hansard to see if it was recorded, because if it was unparliamentary language. And I can assure you that there was nobody on our side, despite how the debate went today and the question period went, there was nobody on our side that used the F word like the Prime Minister used today.
And I don't want you to necessarily say it, but was it the 4-letter F word? Was it F? It was. 4-letter. Yeah, it was a 6-letter reference followed by another word. So it wasn't the 4-letter F word. It was a 6-letter F word. But anyways, hopefully Hansard picked it up.
That ends in OFF?
Not in that context, no. So that's what happened today.
All right. So obviously he left when Mr. Barlow was rising to point of order. Yep. We've got a vote that's coming in. Is there any recompense for this?
It's up to the Speaker. We've asked the Speaker to look into Hansard to see whether in fact it was recorded. I can assure you there were probably 10 to 12 members on our side that heard it. It was loud at the time, Chris, to be frank. You were sitting upstairs. You know how things carry in there. Generally, you can pick up on things. But we'll see whether Hansard actually picked it up.
And I think my colleague David Aiken actually asked the Prime Minister as he went out, I think he referenced his father's lines to Lincoln Alexander, another Tory in 1971, with, "What is the nature of your thoughts, gentlemen, when you move your lips in a particular way?" Reference to, I think, his father's fuddle-duddle. So I'm not sure where he was going with that, but that's, I believe, what the PM said on the way out.
Well, I can tell you what I heard and what my colleagues heard, and it wasn't fuddle-duddle. So, anyways, I don't think he liked the line of questioning today, and that's why he reacted. Look, the Prime Minister has shown this type of emotion in the past, referring to other members of Parliament as pieces of shit, so it's not a surprise to me that he would say that word.
And that, just for the final thing, when I heard up in the gallery you guys were calling throw him out, or something like that, was that anything to do with?
I'm sitting in the front row. I didn't hear that. Maybe you did, but I can't say anything towards that. Look, it was a rather robust question period. There are some very important issues that are facing the nation, and as the official opposition, we have the right to ask the questions as we did. The government has an obligation to answer that, not responding in expletives. So that's it. Thank you. I got to go vote. Thank you.
Thank you.